Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about the travails of 13 years old Ochanya Ogbanje, who was sexually abused by her aunt's husband and her aunt's son, Mr. Andrew Ogbanje and Victor Ogbanje. So Ochanya was the last child of her parents. Her parents had 11 children and she was the last. And they observed she was very bright in her academics and she loved academics a lot. But her parents couldn't really afford the best of education for her because of their financial status. But they thought they could actually give her an opportunity to get the best of education, even though they couldn't afford it. That led to the decision of handing over Ochanya to her aunt, Mrs. Felicia Ogbanje, who lived at Ubokolo in Opoku local government area of Benue State with her family. So Ochanya was said to have begun living with her aunt and the Ogbanjes in general when she was 5 years old, and everything seemed so well, perfectly smooth, until Ochanya turned 8 years old. And one of the children of Mrs. Felicia Ogbanje, known as Victor Ogbanje, began to sexually abuse Ochanya. That went on for a while until one fateful day when his father, Mr. Andrew Ogbanje, discovered that his son had been sexually molesting the little 8 years old girl. And one would think when the father discovered, he saved the situation, right? Saved the girl and, protected her from further possible abuse in future. But no, Mr. Andrew Ogbanje, who is a lecturer in the university in Benue State, shockingly joined his son Victor in sexually abusing that 8 years old girl. So unbelievable. That went on for a while. We're talking about a full-grown adult and his teenage son both abusing an 8 years old girl, and that went on continuously for a period of time up until Ochanya was 13. Now that was when the whole matter got complicated. Like, there were complications. Literally, Ochanya began to urinate uncontrollably because it was said that Mr. Victor and his son were both having carnal knowledge of this little girl via the anus and vagina. So they did serious damage to that girl's organs and they left her damaged, like very, very damaged. It was so bad that she couldn't control her urine. It became a clear case of VVF, vesico vagina fistula. That little girl had to be wearing diapers because she was literally urinating without even knowing. A condition that is very hard to manage, even medically. A condition that people who suffer them are usually left stigmatized by loved ones, by friends, and society in general. That little girl had to go through the psychological trauma, the emotional trauma, and so much more. Because one grown adult somewhere and his child decided that they were not going to control their third legs. Unfortunately, very, very sad and heart-wrenching incident. You know, at some point I wondered and I asked, where was Mrs. Felicia, the aunt to Ochanya, while her husband and son were both abusing that little girl? Where was she? How come she never noticed? I'm sure you're wondering as well, right? Now, this is where I get to burst your bubbles. So Mrs. Felicia actually got word from one of her daughters known as Winnie Obuja. She had found out that both her dad and brother were sexually taking advantage of Ochanya, and she told her mother what she knew for a fact, expecting her mother to take actions in protecting Ochanya, to take action in ensuring that that does not happen again. But what did Mrs. Felicia do? She turned a blind eye and turned a deaf ear. It was as though she heard nothing. I can't begin to imagine how she lived with herself after getting that piece of information about what was going on right under her roof, perpetrated by her husband and son, yet did nothing to protect the minor that was being victimized, that was being abused, that was being destroyed, literally. For her, all that mattered was her son's name, her husband's name, and her marriage. Nothing else mattered. Not even Ochanya's life, not even her sanity, and not even her future. So in 2018, when Ochanya's health situation deteriorated so badly because as a result of the complications that had resulted from the continuous rape from both men, Ochanya was hospitalized for 2 months in Federal Medical Center, Makurdi. Her parents could not ascertain what had resulted in her urinating uncontrollably. To them, it looked as though it was spiritual, coupled with ignorance. But the medical doctors would then reveal the bombshell. That was when the parents got to find out that Ochanya's complications were as a result of continuous rape. It was then that the truth came to light, that her aunt's husband and son had been having carnal knowledge of her since she was 8 years old up to the time when she was 13. As soon as news got on the streets, the internet, and all, the Benue State government decided to take it upon themselves to charge Mr. Andrew Obuja with rape and 3 other count charges. His son Victor, however, had run away, and Fever Nigeria got involved and other relevant organizations who felt they needed to lend their voice and to ensure that justice was served for Ochanya. They needed to be that voice, that strong voice for the little girl who needed all the support she could get at the time. And they thought not only should the husband and son be charged, talking about Mrs. Felicia's husband and son, they thought Mrs. Felicia deserved to face the court as well for negligence, because indeed she was negligent. She was saddled with the responsibility of protecting that little girl, yet she failed at it woefully. Even when her daughter notified her of what was ongoing right under her roof, she turned a deaf ear. So there were strong reasons why she should answer to the court for her negligence. And of course, she was in court, and the Federal High Court in Makurdi found her guilty of negligence, and they sentenced her to 5 months imprisonment. The same day, the judgment was delivered, finding Mrs. Felicia Ogbanje guilty of negligence and sentencing her to 5 months imprisonment by the Federal High Court in Makurdi. That same day, a judgment was also delivered by the State High Court in Makurdi over the case of Mr. Andrew Ogbanje. Now, guess what? The prime... oh my God. The prime suspect was set free by the court. You're shocked, right? I know. And this is where it gets even more heartbreaking. Mr. Andrew Ogbanje, on the same day his wife was sentenced to 5 months imprisonment by the High Court in Makurdi for negligence, for failing to protect Ochanya. That same day, a State High Court in Makurdi discharged and acquitted Mr. Andrew Ogbanje of the rape charge and other charges that were attached. Literally, he was pardoned by the court. I am constrained to speak beyond the judgment of the court, but I would really love to know your thoughts concerning that judgment. Do you think justice was served? Do you think there was denial of justice? Whatever it is that you think, please let me know your thoughts and why in the comments section. But to proceed on this story, Mrs. Felicia Ogbanje, who was sentenced to 5 months imprisonment by the Federal High Court for negligence, decided that she needed to appeal that judgment because in her thoughts, she was innocent. And humanly, she would have thought if her husband, who was the one raping the minor, could be pardoned, why then should she be the one going to jail? I'm sure she must have thought that way. So she decided to explore her right of appeal. She appealed the judgment of the Federal High Court. So the judgment of the Court of Appeal was delivered on the 18th of November 2022. And the Court of Appeal upheld the decision of the Federal High Court because the grounds of appeal were all dismissed. They believe Mrs. Felicia Ogbanje was indeed negligent. She failed to protect little Ochanya Ogbanje. She was saddled with that responsibility, but she failed woefully. And she did not ignorantly fail to protect the girl. She deliberately, intentionally failed to protect Ochanya from her husband and son's sexual abuse. As a matter of fact, one of the judges of the Court of Appeal felt that her sentence was minimal. She deserved even more. But they decided to uphold the judgment of the Federal High Court. So as it stands now, Mrs. Felicia Ogbanje will have to serve her 5 months jail term for negligence. Did I mention Ochanya Ogbanje, the victim of all this, sadly did not survive those complications. She sadly died on the 17th of October 2018 after a battle with those complications. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments section. Do you think justice was served? Do you think justice was outrightly denied? If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe and do well to turn your notifications so you'll be the first to know when next we upload a story. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like it Leave your thoughts in the comment section and do well to share this video. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of your emotions, take care of your mental health, be kind to yourself, be kind to the people around you, and always stay safe. I remain Dorcas Ige Olokun, and I love you.